Good afternoon. After a short break, I'd like to call the Economic Growth and Development Committee to order. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes from the prior meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes in a second? Supervisor Leggett, Supervisor McDivitt, thank you very much. Moving forward, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Do we have a vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain? Moving forward, thank you, everyone. Jim Siplon is here to give us an update on what's happening at the EDC and all the great moves we're making and successes that we hope to follow.
Well, good afternoon, and feels like a while since I saw all of you. I'm glad to see you. It's another beautiful day in Warren County. The outside, I think, is an apt metaphor for the state of the economy. It continues to churn beyond really what we should reasonably expect, to be honest. And the reason I say that is because we, like every other organ or any other community in not only New York, but across the country, are struggling with how are we going to staff. I found listening to the last session interesting as I listened to the mayor. We're going to join him tomorrow at 1 o'clock to try to figure out if there's anything we can do to assist in the development short term of housing for the tourism market. But the truth is that we're still 1,600 jobs posted this week in Warren County, a county of 64,000 people, a county with roughly 25,000 households. It basically means there's a job for 1 out of every 10 households that is unfilled in our economy today. And that fact is what I remind you all, not because I don't think you know, but because I think sometimes we forget that the game of economic development or the challenge of economic development has shifted from solely focusing on how do we bring companies here, which is still something we spend a significant amount of time on. But I actually worry a little bit when we're talking to a company about relocating here, as we do every day, because I'm trying to figure out where are they going to hire people from and where are those people going to live. That is really our challenge right now. It is a generational challenge. In fact, I may have pointed this out before, but this particular document called the Demographic Drought helped educate me about that. It's done by an organization called MC, which is a very, very buttoned up economic organization. It has no political agenda at all. It's a bunch of economists that study population data and business data and sell it to communities so that they can use that for whatever it is that they would like. Matter of fact, I've never seen MC put out a position paper about anything before I saw this. But the facts are that what's happening across the country is so striking that they, like everyone else, were compelled to try to help us figure out what is going on. And while I'm not going to spend too much time on it today, I would tell you that one of the most insightful things they tell you is that for 50 years, we have not met birth rate replacement in the country. This is a problem that's been a long time coming. The pandemic accelerated that by basically taking an awful lot of people out of the workforce all at once. Those above 55, roughly 20% of those above 55 left the workforce. Many of them have not returned. So instead of retiring gracefully over 10 or 12 years, they retired basically over 18 months. We got to figure out how to bring them back in. If we don't figure out how to bring them back in, we have to figure out how to bring people to replace them. In addition, regardless of your political persuasion, it's important to understand that the borders have been closed primarily for issues of public health over the last few years. That's an enormous impact on our entry-level workforce. I listened with interest this morning as one very prominent business owner spoke at our EDC board meeting and spoke specifically about the need to bring workforce for their entry-level business from south of here. Figure out how to both transport them in the short term and house them in the long term. This is the challenge that virtually every business is looking at in not only Warren County, but across New York and across our country. And that is what is shaping the things we work on. It used to be we focused almost exclusively on the incentives we could offer to businesses so they could relocate here. And we still have healthy incentives and we have healthy interest in that activity. But we must also fixate on the problems that the mayor so eloquently shared in the last hour. The fact is that the tourism industry, which underpins the entire economy of this area, right now is fundamentally hobbled. It cannot operate at the capacity that it did prior to the pandemic unless we find a way to bring net new workers in. There are so many people working on this. Liza, I know you hear from all the time. But the efforts of the EDC are going to be increasingly focused on how do we bring resources and information around topics like housing? How do we help close the gap with public transportation south of us so that it makes it much more readily available for those south of us who want to work in this market to be able to get here? How do we address childcare? How do we do anything that will bring somebody who's on the sidelines, currently not participating in the workforce, and let them come into the workforce? It's going to be a lot of singles and doubles. I don't see a single home run out there. But I will say that one of the things we've worked on, perhaps to greater benefit than almost any county in upstate New York, is broadband. When we asked people, when I first took the job, what were the things that mattered to them most if they were to ever consider moving here or relocating here, they told us two things. They needed a home, and they needed that home to have broadband. Now, we've spent a significant amount of time at the EDC trying to help with broadband, not only in Warren County, but with the entire region. Unfortunately, we were not successful in the regional grant application we put in with a number of other North Country counties, the Ntia grant, which we did last summer. We got the word on that a number of weeks ago. And I want to remind you that while we still have 5 areas that we put into that grant that are opportunities for us to expand broadband coverage in Warren County, even some of those have been addressed since that grant application went in. The first of the largest of those areas was in Lake Luzerne. And I see that Supervisor Merlino's not here, but we talk to him about it regularly. There's roughly 250 homes that are in the area between Lake Luzerne and Queensbury on a particular significant region that represents the single largest block in Warren County that does not have a 25 meg broadband standard. We continue to work with carriers to see whether or not that can be addressed. The next largest area is an area in the Warrensburg corridor. Some of that has been addressed by SLIC. So while there used to be about 120 homes in the Warrensburg to Thurman and the Warrensburg to Johnsburg corridors, that's down to about 40 or 50 homes now. But it's still a significant block for those that do not have it. There are small pockets in Johnsburg, but I would say at this point, the vast majority of the things that remained in Johnsburg 2 years ago have been resolved. There are small pockets in Hague. There are small pockets in Horicon. I even believe that there's a pocket or two near Stony Creek. However, I would tell you that we're now down to less than 400 households in all of Warren County. 25,000 households roughly in the county, 400 of them do not have what we would consider to be a modern broadband standard. That's good news and bad news. The good news is we are further along in terms of broadband than almost any rural county in New York. The bad news is that it's going to make it very difficult for us to secure the same level of resource that some of the other areas might. There's greater areas of need in the rest of the state. I remind all of this to you because you need to tell us how aggressive you want to be about this. I spoke with the county administrator about this fact. When I started this 2 years ago, we felt we had a yawning need and we've stepped into it. And I think we've addressed a lot of it, but there's still pieces of it that are left. And right now, any approach to it, whether we seek federal or state funds, is going to require some level of contribution from the community and from carriers. The forums that helped us address this still exist. We still have the call every single week that has elected officials from across the North Country together with carriers and people who have an interest in the topic. So we have the community ready to respond if there's another grant opportunity. I think you should consider in your own communities and certainly dialogue with us as the EDC about what you believe to be the need both in Warren County collectively and in your own communities. I think it's a good news, bad news story. We've accomplished a great deal in the last 2 years. In fact, we're now at a level that rivals the cities of New York in terms of our broadband adoption. But for those people who do not have it, this is still a binary in or out thing. And we will work as aggressively as you would like us to try to address it. So on to the next topic, which is housing. It probably dominates the majority of our time, and it's appropriate that it dominates the majority of our time. I think I've told you before that the Glens Falls MSA, which is one of the smallest in the country, was the 8th largest year-over-year price increase in the last year. So the sticker shock that exists for those that are trying to enter into the housing market was as significant here as it was in places like Austin, Texas, or Boulder, Colorado, or San Jose, California. That's a significant challenge. Unless we step in aggressively to create much more capacity than we have, that pricing pressure will continue to make it very difficult for home ownership for anybody who is entering into the workforce or even in the middle of the workforce. Interesting statistics came out in the Albany Business Journal a number of weeks ago, showed that, as you know, both Queensbury and Glens Falls represent two of the areas in New York that actually experienced population growth in the last census. And of those that are coming in, there's almost a $10,000 income increase for those that are leaving. In other words, the people that are coming here earn significantly more than the people who are leaving. That is an opportunity for us. That tells us that there is room in this market to continue to expand market-based housing. And it tells you that this place is still viewed as a place that has a very high satisfaction quotient for cost of living. So the demand will continue. To bring all this to a point, we are going to reinstitute the annual luncheon that went on for many years that we held up at the Great Escape or whatever was the biggest room we could find. I think the last time we had it was 2019. We're going to start it again. It's going to be on June 17th. We've locked the date down with the Great Escape, and the author of this report is going to be our keynote speaker. I don't think there's anything more important than we can do than to help everyone understand the forces that are shaping all of the things that are happening to us, and to do that as objectively as possible with the people who collect that data. I'm a believer in this, but I think we have hundreds that probably still would benefit from being exposed to the ideas. We will also have speakers from the state, and we will also recognize significant celebrations for the business community here in our area. Despite all of these challenges, there are businesses here that have thrived and continue to grow. And we're going to try to recognize as many of those as possible. One thing I would encourage any of you to do, if you haven't already, is take a look at some of the things we post on our webpage and our social media. We produced a video about a month ago, and I did it very quietly because I wasn't quite sure whether or not people would think it was a good thing to do or not, and whether or not it would turn out, because I'm always a little worried. I did some when I was at Justin. I feel like Sandra Bullock. They're like a movie I don't necessarily want people to watch. But this one turned out, I believe, really, really well. It was done locally. And all it really was, there's very few words. It basically shows young families and people in our community in everyday life here in Warren County. It's a celebration of what makes this place great. And I have to tell you, I'm unabashed in trying to attract more here. If we're going to build a sustainable economy, we want to capitalize on the fact that people want to move here. We have the opportunity to refresh all our institutions, to bring young intellectual capital to bear on things like our schools, our public institutions, our volunteer organizations, and certainly our workforce. The people who come here are more than 10 years younger on average than the people who are retiring. So we're attracting young people. And so we wanted to put a picture to it. I'd love to get your feedback about it. Take a look at that if you haven't seen it and let us know what you think. I think we're going to make a couple more, and we're going to push them out in all the forums we can, including many of our partners forums, including the CEG, which is the Capital District's economic development engine. The goal is to try to make people understand that if you're going to move, this is a great place to come. Now, it's up to us to figure out where are they going to live, how are we going to provide the services that they need. But this is a great problem to have. I tell people all the time, there are communities in New York that would die for the assets that we have to attract people right now. If you have businesses that are dying for workers and you have a place that people don't want to live, that's a deadly combination. We have businesses that need people, but we have a community that people want to live. So now it's up to us to figure out what we do. The last thing I would share with you is that there are significant other areas of our effort that continue. We continue to work with as many of your communities as we can on your needs, including infrastructure. I think that's fundamental to be able to fuel this managed growth that's consistent with your comprehensive use plans and your own organizational and community desires. But there's no doubt that we will need to continue to invest in infrastructure to be able to fuel that. In addition, we work on transportation, trying to figure out how we can better enable transportation. You'll hear more about that. First thing we'd like to do is to try to connect us to the larger Capital District transportation group. We're aggressively working on that with a number of partners. And then we'd like to strengthen the existing transportation links within Warren County so that those linkages can serve as much of the full county as we can possibly bring to bear. Last thing I'd tell you is that I had a meeting. It's a little disjoint, I know, because we talked about broadband earlier, but I had a meeting when I first started this job with a number of you, and you told me what we need is really a lot of help on broadband, particularly in terms of engaging with the state. I have to tell you, in the last 6 or 8 months, significant things have happened, and it's largely being driven by the efforts not only of us, but of a number of people in this community. The state legislature has basically completely changed the way that pole access fees are calculated, largely based on the input that came from groups here in Warren County and north of us. In addition, the current budget has a repeal of the right-of-way taxes that the state currently charges that drive up our costs for broadband. The reason I'm pointing this out to you is because we were effective at advocating when we concentrated on the problem. I think we're going to have to take the same approach to housing. There's a bunch of things that are structurally would either enable us or would cause us to not be able to accomplish our goals. Whatever they are, whether it's things we need or things we need to have removed. We need to identify them and we need to work with them as aggressively as we did on broadband. Broadband is an example. I don't think everything's perfect, but we have made significant progress working with our neighbors and generating as much energy as we can from this county, which is the gateway to the north and what I consider to be the backyard of the south. The Capital District wants to recreate here, and everyone that lives in the North Country needs something that we have in the way of services or economic activity. That puts us in a great place. We're in a position to be able to drive activity if you can help us identify what activity would be most productive. And with that in mind, I'll open myself to any questions, and we'll continue to do this work, report back to you every single month.
Thank you, Jim. I really appreciate it. And I believe the committee members do also. Housekeeping, Supervisor Hogan and Supervisor Frazier, I'm not going to ignore you. I may not see you, so just speak up if you have some questions, and I'm going to leave it up to you first. If either of you have anything you'd like to speak with Jim about. Hearing none, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, thanks for the update, Jim.
Anyone else from the committee? Jim, thanks. Oh, Supervisor Leggett, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I was waiting word for the Ntia grant, and I guess I missed it a couple of weeks ago. Sorry that it didn't go through. Thank you for putting all the effort into it. What's Plan B?
Well, the 5 areas that we attempted to address with that, we've already begun with carriers to try to see if there's just natural, especially now that the state fees have come down, to see if there's just natural market pressures that would lead to them developing. I think to some degree we will get some progress there, but we will not get full adoption for all of these areas. What I think is probably appropriate is for us to go share in detail with the supervisors that are involved so that they're acutely aware of what addresses we believe continue to remain unserved. And then we can tell you what we believe to be the options. Essentially what those options are Reconnect, which is state funding. It's largely being driven from federal funding, which will be administered by the state. And there's some pros and cons of seeking those funds, waiting for another grant effort, or attempting to work with carriers directly ourselves. Those are the 3 basic options that we have. The good news is that we have a forum, and we have the carrier's attention, and we have the legislator's attention. So we can work much more efficiently on this than we could, say, 2 years ago. But ultimately, this is going to be about whether or not we want to commit more money at the county level to address a smaller and smaller piece of the pie.
Any other questions? Jim, thank you so much. A lot of major work that needs to be done. It's not going to be easy, but we're glad to have you. Next up, Liza, if you don't mind, talk about all the great things you're going to accomplish this year instead of what you've done.
Thank you,
Sorry.
Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. I just have one resolution request today. That is our annual request for adding additional workers, particularly for our summer youth employment program. As a friendly reminder, we operate on an academic schedule. So we're still in program year 21 right now, and program year 22 will start July 1st. So the resolution request you have in front of you is for our summer youth employment program and our training and temporary positions for our other programs for program year 2022.
Some motion move it to the floor. Supervisor Leggett, Supervisor McDivitt, thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Liza.
And just one thing I wanted to add to share with the committee. The only thing different on this year's request is that we have raised the wage for our summer youth employment workers to $15 an hour. It has traditionally always been minimum wage, but as you know, fast food restaurants are paying $15 an hour. So our Tri-County area and many other counties agreed to raise their summer youth employment wages this summer as well. So that's the only thing that's different, just for the committee's awareness.
So any other comments from the committee? I'll call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That carries. Liza, over to general information and discussion.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to share a few updates. So we're still at 4% unemployment rate, which is great, but we wonder, why we don't have all these jobs filled. And it's because people who are looking for work can find work, but there are still people not in the workforce. So my department, certainly we're looking to engage as many people as possible to join the workforce who are not in the workforce. As you know, we recently did a job fair with Lake George High School. We're hoping to do more of that. Today, we had 13 inmates also from Warren County Jail participate in one of our virtual workshops. So there are many people with criminal records who face barriers to employment. So that's another population. I recently learned in a training with probation that there are 46,000 laws that prohibit the employment or training of people with criminal records. And so that's another area that we really want to focus on, as well as people with disabilities who are not in the workforce. In Warren County and statewide, only about 35% of people with disabilities are in the workforce. We have about 20 people that we've been funding through training programs, LPNs, CDLs. Particularly anything that's left in my budget after I've worked on my budget is what we use for sponsorship of training. But we're putting a lot of emphasis right now on CDL drivers, so working closely with the Workforce Development Board on that, because that benefits many different industries. And I think we had about 8 LPN students this year as well, which is great that we sponsored through that program when we know that we need more healthcare workers. Our GED class is full for the first time in a long time, and we have people on the waiting list. That's our youth GED class for young people who did not finish high school up to age 24. They can enroll in our free GED class that we partner with BOCES on. So we have about 5 people on the waiting list. So as somebody finishes their GED or drops out of the GED program, somebody else will be pulled in off the waiting list. That's all year. So there's not a certain time frame for enrollment for that. But we're seeing young people engaging in different ways in training opportunities and work opportunities. And that's exciting because we need to keep our young people here, as you've heard from others, as we have an aging population. I'm continuing to work on the barriers to employment, certainly childcare, transportation, and housing. I agree with everything that Mayor Blaze shared earlier, as well as Jim Siplon's concerns about making sure we have enough housing for our workers. The other thing that's important to think about is is our older residents who don't have options to move to, because then we don't have housing opportunities for younger families to move into. So all of these things are definitely barriers to employment. And the one that's not talked about a lot, I will also say, is a big barrier to employment is mental health. People who have mental health challenges and more mental health challenges because of the pandemic. We need to figure out how we're going to support more of them with getting well so that they can consistently participate in the workforce. There's a lot happening and a lot going on, and I'm excited about all of our efforts. There's all this month we're doing Women in the Trades promotion with BOCES. I sat on a panel last week with BOCES at SUNY Adirondack about that. And next week there's an event as well to try to recruit more women into the trades industries. This is something I would really like to spend more time, not just women, but young people, getting them into the trades, because they often hear they have to go to college and they don't. There will always be kids and families who expect their children to go to college, but there are many kids who want to know about other opportunities. That work really requires somebody designated to do that. And my youth counselor and my coordinator spend a lot of time on other programs. So I'm hoping in the future I can expand my department and get more workers to help with all of these projects. But currently we are using our total federal grant budget for our current programs that we're doing. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Liza. She even failed to mention some of the other successes that she's had. She's been instrumental in expanding the CDTA bike program, the bike share program, and also the work with our high school students. Liza, you failed to mention that, but from what I hear, there was a great event at the Lake George High School to help build awareness of our youth to be able to support our tourism industry. And I'm hoping to work with her this coming month to try to expand it into some of the other school districts that we have within the county to see if we can actually build on that support that we're getting. So she's much more than employment and training. She does quite a bit, and she's like the Energizer's her buddy all over the place. So I will open it up to any questions from the committee. Seeing none. Anyone else have any questions for Liza? Great job, Liza. We'll talk soon.
Thank you for your
very
time.
much. So moving on, Wayne, let's talk about planning and community development, if you don't mind. And I have to let everybody know I teased him a little bit this morning because I know he keeps on talking about retiring. So I wanted him to sit and relax for a few minutes while everybody else went before him. So there you go, Wayne.
Get into that mode. Is that right? Okay. I have a number of resolutions in front of you today for consideration. Looking at the agenda, the first three resolutions all tie together, and I'll talk about number 3 first, and that's to establish the capital fund for the recreation study. Resolution number 1 transfers staff time into that fund so that we can build that in. We had a $7,500 match of in-kind services from the staff, so that's what that'll set up. Number 2 is, as I indicated, Resolution 294 of 2021 gave us the authority to apply for the grant, and the county provided the matching funds of $3,500. Those funds got put into the 8021 budget, but at the end of the year, they just kind of went away. So talking with Rob in the treasurer's office, we need to reappropriate those funds. And that's what the second resolution in there does. So really all 3 are together. I don't know if you want to take one action on all 3 or whether you want to do them separate.
It'll be up to the committee.
All 3.
All 3? Supervisor Leggett and second by Supervisor McDevitt. I think his hand is up. Thank you, Supervisor McDevitt. Let's any discussion on this? Wayne, I do have one question. You said 3,500 on here and it says 35,000.
Yes, I thought, oh, did I say 3,500? It's 35,000.
Okay. All right. But that was in the budget and appropriated. So
Correct.
Any discussion? Seeing none, call this to vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Wayne, going forward.
Okay, the next 3 are very similar. We'd like to close Capital Fund H347. It's been around for a while. The first resolution number 4 transfers $256.81 into the transfer account. Then the next resolution takes it from the transfer account and puts it into 347 to clear a negative balance. And what happens there is we bill staff time to these grant programs. And when you get right down to the wire, payrolls every 2 weeks. If we put a couple extra hours in there that we didn't catch, we're over. So we want to clear that balance and close out that capital fund. So that's what those 3 resolutions do. And again, if you want to take them separate or together, that's up to the committee.
It is up to the committee. Can I have a motion?
I'll move all 3 of them.
Thank you, Supervisor McDevitt. Supervisor McGowan on the second. Any questions, discussion? Seeing none, I'll call a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries also.
Okay, number 7 is the straight up close capital fund 292, no funds returned to the county. It was a first wilderness grant. I believe it was 2007, 2008 funding. Treasurer's office been after me to close it, so I finally getting around to it.
So Wayne, just a housekeeping. I thought we did 3 and 4, the last.
You did 4, 5, and 6 was the last.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. So have a motion to bring number 6,
7.
number 7. Sorry. We'll get there. Number 7 to the floor. Supervisor McGowan in a second. Supervisor McDevitt or Leggett. Sorry. Thank you. Any discussion? Supervisor Leggett.
Yeah, the capital project may be closing, but all the work still continues on.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty good to have that first wilderness. Really broke new ground, you might say.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries also.
Number 8 is just information for the committee that we intend to fill the senior planner position that's in our table of organization and is fully funded. We have put out the job announcement for that. I'm going to be honest, it doesn't look good. There's right now in the upstate chapter of the American Planning Association, there's 13 job openings. Most of them pay more than we do. Hopefully it's quality of life someone is looking for and they'll want to come this way. But, there's been no bites yet. So it's been out a couple weeks. I'll be out a couple more weeks and we'll have to evaluate and see what happens after that.
Maybe
So
we'll throw
bring this
housing in there.
Jim will throw free house in.
So let's bring this motion to the floor. Do I have someone to bring a motion? Supervisor McGowan, second. Supervisor Leggett, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries also. Discussion items, Wayne.
Yes, at the board meeting actually, there's one more. There was an addendum
Oh,
to the
You're correct.
agenda
Sorry that.
based on the board meeting on Friday where the funds were set aside for Countryside from the ARPA money and from the general fund or from some fund. And so this resolution request is to increase H 406 Countryside for that matching amount. And that would put all the funding in place that will meet or address the estimate of probable costs from Clough Harbor Associates for work that needs to be done at Countryside, or at least the majority of the work.
I need a motion to bring this to the floor. Supervisor McDevitt, the second. Supervisor McGowan, thank you. Any questions, discussions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of request number 9, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed. That carries also. Back to discussions. Wayne?
Just one thing I wanted to bring up. Ethan's going to talk about the comprehensive plan process. But Jim, for 5 years, I was stationed in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, and there's no more remote area in the country than that Upper Peninsula. And I still maintain contact with a lot of people up there that I was stationed with and that retired up there. Most of them use Starlink. They rave about the service. The cost is less than $100 a month. they get 130 meg download and 30 meg upload speed. So I'm just wondering if that's a possibility for some of the remote areas.
It is.
Can I-
The mountains created some challenge for some.
Can I be in here?
Absolutely, please.
Thank you. I actually did speak with Starlink quite extensively, and they looked at Northern Warren County as a potential for a pilot program when they were first starting out a few years ago. And the mountains are not something they were interested in dealing with. But I will offer to follow up with them if we want to look into this, because they may have advanced their technology in the meantime. I don't know. But it was a resounding no 3 years ago. I'll say that.
Yeah, I know they're launching new satellites at what, 50 a clip on a, so, at some point they want to have, I don't know, 35,000 of those little slivers floating around up there. So, but anyway, on the discussion items, I had a discussion regarding countryside, but that was resolved at the board meeting Friday. So we took care of that resolution. I believe, yep, Ethan is on. I'd like for him to, since the county did advance $200,000 for a comprehensive plan, we've had a lot of discussions in the office about that, and Ethan has some comments. I understand that we're way late, so we'll try to keep it brief.
We have 20 minutes.
Hmm?
We have 20 minutes
Do we?
of our hour. So
Okay.
although some would like us to keep it shorter.
Hey, in that case, a couple of quick updates on the county comprehensive plan. As Wayne mentioned, last Friday, the funding was approved by the full board. The next step in the process is for us to fine tune the request for proposals. Wayne and I, looking at best practice, we're gonna, work on this internally and then circulate it to any of the other involved parties that want to see this. I think we'll have to figure out the who is the group of people that does approve the final RFP before we do release it for circulation. And then to address a couple of the questions that came up during the Board of Supervisors meeting. I know, Chairman Wild said, hey, how do we make sure that this plan is a good investment? And we looked in a little bit further into benchmarking. How do we establish, performance metrics into the planning process? So we're updating the RFP to include mention of that. So whatever consultant does decide to take this project will have a very clear understanding of that. We want to be able to evaluate this plan on a regular basis. We're not going to know what those metrics are until we actually get into the planning process itself. Additionally, I know that Supervisor Diamond has mentioned, hey, how do we make sure we get all the municipalities involved with this? We get representation from everyone. That's really going to be up to the formation of a project advisory committee. We need to figure out the role of this committee versus the project advisory committee when it comes to, guiding the process of developing the comprehensive plan. Again, we're going to defer to qualified consultants to help us form the project advisory committee. We'd definitely like to extend this group beyond just elected officials and staff from the county. We need to get diverse representation. We'll go through that process in detail. Wayne and I have already started looking at some of the potential processes that we think would work. And as we do go through the consultant selection, we'll bear all of that in mind. So right now, it's really just an issue of, developing the RFP, getting that drafted, getting consensus on that, and then, we'll send it out and start, getting proposals. And then I think this group or whoever else will be tasked with evaluating those after Wayne and I at least take a first pass at them. Are there any questions about timeline or process? I think everyone here is fairly familiar with what the comprehensive plan is.
Thanks. Thank you, Ethan. And I know that everyone here was supportive of this. So do we have any additional questions for the short term? I'm sure we'll get an update again next month. Seeing none, Wayne, is there anything else?
Yeah, the one thing I'll point out is Ethan and I have had some discussions, and it can go either way. We're wondering if internally, we're wondering if we should just merge the recreation study with the comprehensive plan as a single process rather than have multiple studies going on involving the same people basically, and they meet 1 week on one thing and the next week on something else. And so my first blush is that I'd like to do that, but since these are grant funded, the housing study and the recreation study are grant funded, we have to follow the grantor agency's rules, and whether MWBE requirements would then flow out to every the full funding source, including our local funds. Those are all questions we have to answer.
Yeah, that's a good point that Wayne makes, is that we have to be very conscious of the fact that we are launching 3 studies in a similar time frame. Housing needs assessment, recreation economy strategic plan, and the comprehensive plan. The idea of planning fatigue is very real. Hey, some guy just came to ask me this. Hey, I showed up this focus session. Where do I invest my energy? So whether it's, having one prime consultant with their subcontractors working on various elements of these other plans, that's yet to be determined. In any event, this outdoor recreation economy strategic plan and the housing needs assessment will be incorporated into the comprehensive plan as elements. So it's all leading towards the same thing. We just got to get to the nuts and bolts, how we make it more efficient.
Wayne, do you need any help helping with that decision? Or is this something that you and Ethan are going to try to work through?
I think it's something Ethan and I can work out, at least initially, because we have to contact the grantor agencies and do all that homework first. I think I kind of came up with this either yesterday or Friday after the board meeting about, combining them all. And I think Ethan's point about fatigue is very real. And so it's something we would have to consider and factor into how we proceed forward. But, I think I can speak for Ethan, but we're real enthused about this process. So hopefully it's going to be a lot of fun. And I know this is government, you're not supposed to say it's fun, but when I did the first wilderness plan years ago, and over a couple of years, it was 182 different meetings I attended, but it was fun. It was good to get out in the communities and really get involved with everything that was going on. So hopefully this will be the same. So that's all I have.
Thank you. We'll look forward to an update. Any other comments, questions from the committee? Privilege of the floor. Seeing none, Mr. Lehman, just before you respond, if there's any comments, I'm wondering if you might be able to support the announcement that the EDC is going to do their annual event, and if you could help support that on our website, social media.
Sure, I'm always willing to help them whenever asked, not a problem. And we do not have any comments on YouTube as well.
All right, so I guess from now, I'm just looking for a motion to adjourn. Supervisor Leggett, Supervisor McGowan, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you. I'll be sending this out.